I'm Emily, and I had recently moved to Seattle, Washington. I rented a room in a boarding house that was only for women tenants. The landlord greeted me warmly. He explained that due to the recent serial killer case being covered in the media, many people were looking for secure places like his boarding house, and he had only one vacant room left. He confidently stated that his place had the highest level of security in the area. The security and alarm systems were always the top priority. Emergency buttons were installed in both the bedroom and the bathroom. Pressing them would directly contact the security company in the building next door, ensuring an immediate response 24/7. The landlord showed me room 412. Everything in the room was exactly as he described, so I was very satisfied. I signed the lease agreement that same afternoon. The first few days were busy with work and my new life. I thought I was starting to settle in when something terrifying happened. I started noticing a strange man. The first time was in front of the building when I was coming home from work. His eyes followed me as I walked past. I figured he was waiting for someone he knew. I ran into him a second time, also in front of the building. This time, he looked directly at me with a serious expression. I quickly entered the code for the main door leading into the hallway and locked it immediately. My reaction felt a little exaggerated and silly at the time. The next day, I was walking home after buying some supplies when I distinctly felt someone walking behind me. The distance between us was closing fast. My steps sped up and my heart pounded. When I got near the building, I ran inside as fast as I could. Once I got into my room, I immediately pressed the emergency alarm button. A few minutes later, 2 security guards arrived, but the strange man was gone. I tried to explain what had just happened. Finally, they said they would check the hallway camera and then left. After that incident, the man stopped appearing near the building. I thought everything was over until one day. I worked late and got home quite late. The parking lot was pitch black, with only a few scattered cars left. I quickly walked toward my car when suddenly a strong force pinned me from behind and a hand clamped tightly over my mouth. I struggled but couldn't get free. "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you," the voice whispered right next to my ear. After a few seconds, I stopped fighting, and he slowly loosened his grip. I turned around. It was the same man who had been lurking near me all those days. He was tall, thin, and probably about 30 years old. I backed up, ready to run, but his next words made me stop. "I know what you think of me, but I'm not a bad guy. I need to talk to you about room 412. My ex-girlfriend used to live in that room. She died 3 months ago. She chose to end everything because of some miserable jerks." I swallowed, trying to maintain distance. He took out his phone and showed me a video of a girl taking a shower that was posted on an adult website. The camera angle showed the girl was being secretly filmed without her knowledge. This video was widely shared. She couldn't take it and chose to end her life on the rooftop of this building. The police couldn't investigate because there was no evidence. The video's source couldn't be traced, and the victim was dead. The perp even threatened to sue me for defamation. "You are living in that room. You might be being filmed right now. Trust me. What are you planning to do next? Help me find the hidden camera to use as evidence. Please help me get justice for her." Everything sounded crazy, but the emotion in his eyes was too real. I finally agreed. Back at the boarding house that night, I couldn't sleep. I used my mobile data, went incognito, and searched for information about the incident at this building 3 months ago. It was true that an event had occurred just as the man described. I looked around the room with suspicion. The alarm button on the wall suddenly seemed questionable. What if that really was where a camera was hidden? It was mounted in a high position, pointing directly at the center of the room. And more importantly, there was one in the bathroom too. I started searching online for information about hidden cameras. I didn't just read articles. I watched dozens of tutorial videos on how to detect hidden recording devices, both from security experts and former victims. I took notes on common installation spots. I learned how to distinguish between a regular screw head and a disguised camera, and how to use reflected light to find a lens. I watched videos demonstrating how to check using a phone camera and a small handheld mirror. I took a small mirror into the bathroom, pretending to put on makeup and recording myself to share a beauty tip. I moved the phone camera angles naturally to get my best side. I used my phone camera to scan the alarm button on the ceiling. At a specific angle, the flash reflected back as a tiny circular dot. It wasn't metal. It was a layer of glass. I left the bathroom, pretending not to have noticed anything. I needed to create a plausible excuse to disable the device without raising suspicion. I turned on the hot water in the tub and closed the door tightly. The steam built up densely. After nearly half an hour, the alarm button made a sputtering sound and then went dead. I waited a few more minutes and called the landlord, saying the device seemed to short circuit after I took a hot bath. He said he would send someone to fix it in the next day or two. I texted the man to update him. I explained clearly. The alarm button in the bathroom had a small glass dot that reflected light, exactly where he had mentioned. It was disguised extremely well, but I was certain it was a camera. He told me to keep the scene intact and to let him contact the police. He promised to move quickly. From that moment, I no longer felt safe in my own room. I knew I was being watched. Every time I showered, every time I changed clothes, I had to stay calm, pretending I didn't know. Any strange movement could raise suspicion. I always kept my back to the device, minimized all my activities, and tried not to stare at where the camera was mounted. Finally, one Tuesday morning, a search warrant was issued. The police raided the boarding house and the security company building next door simultaneously. They seized dozens of server devices, hard drives, and uncovered a whole network of cameras installed in every room of the boarding house. The landlord, the man I thought was kind and trustworthy, turned out to be the ringleader of a major criminal organization. He owned both the boarding house and the security company, exploiting the trust of tenants to secretly film them and produce illegal videos. Those videos were then distributed on dark websites, bringing in huge profits for him and his accomplices. I moved out of the boarding house that very day. The police assured me that all the videos of me and the other women living in the building would be permanently deleted. But nothing can completely erase the feeling of being violated. It took many weeks after that before I could get a full night's sleep. The feeling of private space being invaded is like an invisible wound, aching every time I remember it. But I also realized that my initial fear of the strange man almost made me miss the opportunity to escape the real danger. I don't call myself brave. I just did what I had to do, for myself first, and for the other women. Since then, I've understood that safety does not lie in promises or a seemingly trustworthy appearance. Safety comes from being clear-headed enough not to trust blindly and courageous enough to face the truth. Vigilance and caution are never too much, especially when we are women, because the place where we let down our final guard might be the most vulnerable spot of all.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
I am Mike. Everything began in early winter in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dave, my best friend since college, and I were working together at a newly opened branch of a tech company. We often went to a newly opened luxury gym nearby. I, a weightlifting addict, spent most of my time in the free weight area trying to bulk up. Dave was obsessed with the cardio section, diligently working on the treadmill and stationary bike. In that cardio area, we met Chloe. She had a fit body, was always full of energy, and had a radiant smile. Chloe worked at a partner company in the same building, a typical office lady. I often saw Dave and Chloe standing next to each other, although Dave always pretended to be busy looking straight at the machine's console. After that, my company moved offices. My work schedule became erratic. I couldn't maintain a fixed workout time, and meetings with Dave became less frequent. One day I received a call from Dave. "She's stalking me." I burst out laughing, thinking my friend was joking. Dave recounted that Chloe always appeared a few minutes later than him, but would surely choose the treadmill right next to him, regardless of how many other machines were empty. She would smile and ask Dave about his workout goals, about his weekend plans. Notably, she always finished her workout and left at the same time as Dave. That's peak time after work. Everyone has the same workout schedule and habits. That's totally normal. This is a deliberate boundary violation. She is a stalker. With every call, Dave's anxiety and frustration escalated. That weekend, things spiraled out of control. Dave had just bought a new SUV and was excited to drive 2 hours to a newly opened Walmart supercenter in the suburbs to hunt for discounted electronics. As Dave was looking at a large-screen TV, a voice rang out, full of surprise. "Oh my God, Dave! What a coincidence." It was Chloe. She was with her mother. Chloe introduced him to her mother. It was a casual, social gesture. But to Dave, who was steeped in paranoia, it was proof that she was trying to invade his personal life. He called to tell me the story and was practically exploding. What is she thinking? She followed me for 2 hours of driving just to run into me at some damn mall. I felt uneasy about his excessive anxiety. Dude, it's the mall. Thousands of people go there on Sunday. It's very likely just a random coincidence. You need to calm down. It's because of superficial weightlifting idiots like you that stalking murders happen. You don't understand the seriousness of this threat. Then call 911, you psycho. The police never do anything. After that, Dave's calls stopped completely. I was busy with work and didn't pay attention. I thought he had finally calmed down and accepted the truth. 3 months later, my phone rang. It was the local police department. The officer said my friend Dave had been arrested for stalking a woman. He was caught red-handed following her and was detained by her boyfriend. The officer asked me to come to the station because Dave insisted that the woman herself was the stalker and that I was the only witness who could prove he was the victim. I worried about going to court and the impact on my job, but I went to the police station anyway. There, the truth was revealed. The woman Dave was stalking was none other than Chloe. Dave explained to the police in a shaky, confused voice. She was stalking me, so I had to investigate myself. I was following Chloe to find evidence that she was stalking my mailbox and my apartment. The police cross-referenced the statements. Chloe recounted that she had felt followed for weeks after she politely declined Dave's invitation for coffee. She had talked to her boyfriend. That evening, her boyfriend ambushed and caught Dave while he was sneaking near Chloe's apartment after she'd left the gym. I wrote a full statement of everything Dave had told me, providing the messages we had exchanged. The police determined this was excessive paranoia. He was severely warned and forced to sign an official restraining order. I bailed Dave out. The police emphasized that he must quit the gym and seek mental health monitoring. Dave mumbled, "She has a boyfriend already." In that moment, I understood everything. Dave had fabricated the entire stalking story because his ego was hurt after discovering the girl he secretly liked already had a boyfriend. He was the victim of a tragic heartbreak and defensive paranoia. After that, Dave quit his job. Before leaving, he told me his final words, his eyes wide, filled with fear. Police patrol cars frequently slow down past my apartment. They visit often to check on me and lecture me on pointless things about stalking behavior. Dave believed that now, the police themselves were the ones stalking him, driving him insane.
My name is Josh, and I run the YouTube channel Josh and His Van. To me, my van isn't just a vehicle. It's my home, my studio, and my best friend on the open road. I'm used to the wolves howling in Yellowstone and the thick, foggy nights in the Appalachians. But what happened at the edge of the Umpqua National Forest in Oregon last January completely changed how I think about being alone. It was a gray, gloomy afternoon. I found what seemed like the perfect spot to park, right at the edge of the woods. It was open enough to get a cell signal, but close enough to nature to get some great footage. Everything started out slow and peaceful, just like any other camping trip. As it started to get dark, I decided to take a short hike into the forest to explore. I grabbed my camera and a flashlight and followed a narrow trail overgrown with roots and rocks. The air in the Umpqua forest at night felt strange. It was thick and smelled like damp, rotting wood. After walking for about 15 minutes, I stumbled upon a rusty iron gate hidden behind some thick brush. Behind it, standing tall in the eerie darkness, was an abandoned church. I pointed my camera at the gray walls, the shattered windows, and the crumbling roof. It felt pretty creepy. I got a bad gut feeling, so I decided not to explore any further and figured I'd just come back in the morning. I turned around to head back down the trail, but after a few steps, I realized I had left my gimbal leaning against that old iron fence. I turned back, and my heart nearly stopped. In the dim glow of my flashlight, I swear to you, there was a figure standing right next to my gimbal. It was a tall, pitch-black shape, and it was completely motionless. At first, I tried to tell myself it was just a weirdly shaped tree or a shadow from my light. But as I took a few steps closer, the figure suddenly vanished. It didn't move away, it just faded into the darkness without a sound. Terror hit me like a wave. I lunged for the gimbal, and at that exact moment, the iron gate behind me slammed shut with a bone-chilling bang. I didn't even think. I latched the gate and ran like my life depended on it toward my van, never looking back once. When I got to the van, I locked every single door. The feeling of being inside that metal shell helped me calm down a little. I made myself a hot cup of coffee and opened my laptop to edit video, trying to shake off the memory of that shadow by the church. However, the peace didn't last long. Around 1 a.m., as I was drifting off to sleep on the back bench, a tiny sound made me bolt awake, the distinct click of a door handle. Someone was right outside, quietly and patiently trying to open my van door. Luckily, I had locked up tight. I flipped on every light in the van, hoping the brightness would scare them off. The picking at the lock stopped instantly. A few seconds later, I heard an engine start. I risked a peek out the window and saw a sedan backing up and then speeding off into the night. I stood by the door, watching for a bit, but there were no other signs of life. I went back inside, made sure the locks were set, and tried to sleep. But the nightmare wasn't over. Around 3 a.m., I heard an engine again. This time, it wasn't the sedan from before. It was a rugged 4x4 truck. It pulled up and stopped in the exact same spot, just a few yards from my van. This time, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat there in total silence, watching. I couldn't see who they were, but I heard footsteps stop right next to my van. My safety was definitely on the line. I had no idea if these were the same people from before. I stayed quiet and could clearly hear their breathing and the sound of them walking around the van. Then, once again, the door handle turned. This time, it was forceful and aggressive. I felt the whole van shake slightly as they tried to wrench the door open. In a situation like this, you should leave immediately. but I hesitated. Part of me wanted to open the door just to see who was out there. Finally, my survival instinct kicked in. I had to get out of there now. I scrambled into the driver's seat, skipping all my usual safety checks. I jammed the key in, cranked the engine, and flipped my high beams on. In the flash of the headlights, I saw two figures freeze, their hands still gripping my van door. I floored it. The van roared and sped down the bumpy trail. Looking in my rearview mirror, I was horrified to see the 4x4 turn on its lights and start chasing me. It was a heart-pounding chase for 10 minutes down those winding forest roads. It wasn't until I reached the main highway and saw the lights of long-haul trucks that the 4x4 suddenly slowed down, pulled a U-turn, and disappeared back into the woods. I drove all night, too scared to stop, until the sun came up and I found myself in a small town over 100 miles away. Only then did I feel like I was truly safe. Later, when I watched the footage I filmed that afternoon, I saw something I had missed at the gate. In one very brief frame, as I pointed the camera at the church, there was a pale white face staring at me from behind a broken window. I still don't know what was standing next to my gimbal that day. I don't know why I was hunted. Was it a sick joke? Some weird ritual? Or did I accidentally trespass on something I shouldn't have? I'm still out here exploring, but I've learned a very expensive lesson about staying alert when you're out in the middle of nowhere.
I am Ethan, a software engineer. In early December 2024, I had just quit my job after a prolonged period of burnout. I wanted to escape the suffocating city rhythm, so I decided to try solo camping to find a sense of freedom and balance. I booked a spot at a remote campsite called Raven's Nest through a self-service website. According to the online information, it was a small, isolated camp in the Olympic National Forest. It was unmanaged, completely isolated, and only about the size of a football field. That absolute quiet was exactly what I was looking for. I arrived in the late afternoon. There were only 3 other groups camping: a middle-aged man traveling alone who introduced himself as Bronco, notable for his Denver Broncos logo ring, and 2 men riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles who looked over 40. They were rugged but spoke politely, carrying wine like connoisseurs. They seemed friendly enough. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and then everyone returned to their own tents. No one exchanged phone numbers, and I didn't feel it was necessary. As night fell, the camp became absolutely silent, with only the rustling wind and occasional sounds of small animals stirring in the bushes. But around 2 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly woke up to strange noises. They weren't the sounds of wild animals. They were the footsteps of multiple people and whispers very close to my tent. I immediately turned off my flashlight, crawled low to the ground, and peered out through a small gap in the bottom of the tent fabric. I froze when I saw at least 30 people moving around the clearing. They were walking in lines carrying long wooden planks, arranging them as if they were building something. Everyone wore a slight smile, but their eyes were vacant. No one spoke loudly. Their movements were eerily synchronized, as if they were performing a ritual they knew by heart. A chilling feeling ran down my spine. Every instinct told me I was facing something that was not merely bizarre, but dangerous. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands, texting my 2 close friends, Jim and Mitch, who lived nearby. I typed frantically, ignoring grammar. I'm camping at Raven's Nest. Something very weird is happening. I'm surrounded. There are so many people. I don't know where they came from. They're carrying wood. I'm scared. They're smiling, like they're hypnotized. I can't breathe loudly. They're getting close to my tent. Someone is pulling the zipper. Just as I sent the last message, the phone screen suddenly flickered and died. I was bewildered. The battery was full, and there had been no sign of malfunction before. I don't clearly remember what happened after that. When I woke up, I found myself curled up inside a cramped wooden box. The space was only barely enough for me to breathe. The gaps inside were packed with rocks, preventing me from moving my limbs. My entire body was freezing. I could feel a slight vibration underneath, as if the box was floating on water. I tried to listen. Outside, there was the rhythmic sound of lapping waves. There was no light and no human sounds. I was abandoned in the middle of a forest lake, inside a wooden box. I began to scream, pounding on the wooden walls with my knees and elbows. I had completely lost my composure. My head was spinning and my chest ached with fear and despair. Miraculously, my cries for help were heard. Jim and Mitch, after receiving my texts, immediately set off in Mitch's pickup truck. They tracked my signal to a place called Echo Lake, a nearby campsite with a confusingly similar name. There, they found a group of people gathered around a huge bonfire, calling themselves the Meteor Watchers Society. Bronco's Harley and SUV were parked nearby, but I was nowhere to be found. No one claimed to know who I was. Sensing that something was deeply wrong, Jim suggested they split up to check the Nakiri Gorge area, a long closed canyon that had a trail connecting to Raven's Nest. It was there that they heard the screams coming from the direction of the lake. Mitch jumped into an old wooden canoe near the dock. He paddled out to the middle of the lake, where an object was floating. It was the wooden box I was trapped in. He used a utility knife to cut the ropes wrapped around the lid, then forced it open. I nearly tumbled out, soaking wet, crying, vomiting, my breath ragged from panic. We quickly returned to shore, but just as we got into the truck, two Harleys burst out of the woods and began tailing us closely. Jim yelled at Mitch to speed up. Mitch drove like a maniac on the bumpy trail, tires spitting out dirt and rocks, while the two men relentlessly chased us. It wasn't until we reached the main road and saw the town lights that they finally gave up. The three of us drove straight to the nearest police station in Clallam County and reported the entire incident. During the days I spent recovering in the hospital, Jim and Mitch decided to do some digging. They found that Raven's Nest was just a temporary camping post that reopened near Nakiri Gorge, the site of a mass disappearance back in 2011. According to old records, the area was once the operational center of a cult called the Meteor Riders. This group operated cyclically with meteor showers, believing they had to sacrifice two lives. One burned in fire to be offered to the Sky Dragon, and one drowned in water to appease the starry heavens. 2 days later, the police checked the Nakiri Gorge area, but there were no traces left. No tents, no cars, no fire pits. Everything had vanished cleanly, as if it had never existed. I recounted the entire ordeal, but they seemed skeptical. One officer said, "We didn't find the wooden box, and there's no concrete evidence." I understood the look in their eyes. They were starting to think I had imagined it, suffering from stress-induced hallucinations and panic. There was nothing to prove I had been kidnapped, except for a few messages I had sent. Everything else was the word of me and my two friends. This reality left me feeling more isolated and confused than the night I was locked in the box. 3 days after I returned home, I received a call from the local police. They informed me they had found a charred human finger left in the ashes at the Echo Lake campsite. On the finger was the Bronco's ring that Bronco had been wearing when I met him. Jim sighed when he heard the news. He was certain that Bronco was the fire sacrifice in the cult's ritual. Mitch recalled that he had smelled burnt meat mixed with kerosene that day, but at the time, he just thought someone was grilling. I remembered before going to bed, the two bikers had invited Bronco and me to drink wine. I only took a sip, but Bronco finished the glass. Now I understood. The wine had been drugged. Bronco was sedated and burned alive. As for me, because I only drank a little, they took me for the water sacrifice by stuffing me into the wooden box and leaving me to drift on the lake. I thought I had escaped, but a month and a half later, I received a strange Christmas card. The card invited me to a free dinner at a hotel in Seattle. The sender was a company named Meteor 5. I stood in stunned silence. Meteor means star. I no longer had any doubt. The Meteor riders were still alive, and they knew my home address. I started preparing to retreat from my old life. I sold my belongings, quit my job, and planned to leave the city. I wrote down everything that happened, not for sympathy, but as a warning. If someone invites you stargazing, camping, or to attend a free event, be cautious. Not all cults are just superstition. Some are organized crime. I escaped the wooden box in the lake, but I don't know if I can escape the meteor riders forever. I'm Lena. My job is serving drinks at a large casino on the Las Vegas Strip. Every work night is a battle of nerves. I have to smile at rude, drunk men who are ready to harass at any moment. But I have to keep this job because I need the money. New Year's Eve that year was especially exhausting. Around 10 at night, I dealt with a rude, drunk customer. I used my experience to calm him down, accepted the tip, and immediately used exhaustion as an excuse to leave early. As I was changing to go home, I got a text from my best friend, Abby. She pleaded with me to come to the luxurious suite she and a group of friends had rented for a New Year's party. The most convincing reason for me was that Josh would be there. Josh was a cute bartender I had been seeing recently. We hadn't made the relationship official yet, but we both had feelings for each other. Despite my fatigue, I accepted. Before leaving the changing room, I noticed an object placed on the bench in front of my locker. It was a pitch-black rose with a small folded piece of paper clipped to the stem. I opened it. There was only one handwritten line. "See you tonight, Mr. X." I was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. I secretly hoped the sender was Josh, trying to create a romantic surprise. But I was also curious. What did X stand for? I tossed the paper into my purse, picked up the black rose, and left. I called a taxi and arrived at the Belladonna Hotel around 10 p.m. The building glowed with lights right on the main avenue. The hotel lobby was packed, the sound of New Year's music and laughter echoing everywhere. I squeezed through the crowd, trying to inch into the elevator. Suddenly, a tall figure in a black coat stopped right in front of me. He wore a mask shaped like a blank, expressionless white face, revealing only his eyes. He stood still, staring straight at me for a few seconds, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. I shook my head, trying to ward off the chilling feeling. As I entered the elevator, the advertising screen mounted on the wall flickered. In a fleeting instant, I saw the image of the man in the black coat appear. I was startled, but the screen quickly returned to normal. I told myself, it must be exhaustion. Arriving at the suite, I immediately went to the private bathroom to freshen up. I locked the door. Instantly, the wall-mounted TV shut off and then turned back on. The face of the man wearing the white mask appeared, looking straight at me. I froze in shock. I could feel him smiling through his eyes. Then, he slowly spoke. "Hello, Lena. Does my black rose please you?" A shiver ran down my spine. He not only knew my name, but also confirmed he was X, the one who sent the flower. The initial feeling of being special vanished, replaced by horror. I stepped back and gathered all my courage to ask him a question that was almost meaningless in this situation. But it was my last hope. Are you Josh?" He didn't answer. The image on the TV switched to a video clip. It was Josh sitting in the living room. The camera slowly moved, showing Josh leaning close to Abby's ear, whispering something. Abby giggled, her eyes full of hidden meaning. His voice was challenging. Did your best friend call you here to see this? I was glued to the screen. Josh and Abby were together for too long, too close. All my psychological defenses collapsed. I only felt jealousy and anger. Suddenly, the image on the TV shut off. I stood in a daze. It was just a prank, I told myself. Some weirdo hacked the TV. I tried to reapply my lipstick, regaining my professional appearance. My hand was still shaking slightly, but I tried to create a shell of calm. I took a deep breath, intending to step out, but the door wouldn't open. I tried turning the knob forcefully again, but it was locked from the outside. Is anyone there? I knocked on the door, but no one answered. The feeling of being locked alone in the silent bathroom was suffocating. My mind kept swirling with images of Josh and Abby being intimate together. I clenched my fists, my whole body restless, as if trapped in my own helplessness. I don't remember how long I was trapped until the music outside suddenly cut off. Then the countdown sounded. 10, 9, 8. I jumped up, banging hard on the door. Is anyone there? Please open the door. I'm stuck in here. I screamed in despair. Just then, the TV screen mounted on the wall lit up again. Happy New Year, Lena. I looked up, staring at the screen. It showed something. I squinted. It took a few seconds to identify the shape. At first, I thought it was a strange leather mask, but it wasn't. It was a person's face skin, a real layer of face skin peeled off with raw muscle tissue still clinging to the edges. Blood streamed down from the bridge of the nose to the chin. A ringing sound went off in my head. I backed away, clutching my chest. The screen was still brightly lit, exposing everything. How do you like it now that I have the face of the one you like? I felt instantly numb when I heard that sentence. Looking at the hair color and the small scar near the temple, I realized with horror, it was Josh. I let out a long scream. I rushed to yank the doorknob. This time, it opened. I dashed out of the bathroom like a maniac. I ran out into the hallway and collided hard with Abby. When we recognized each other, we both looked utterly panicked. Josh is dead, Abby stammered out. We clung to each other, screaming in panic until we were helped by hotel staff. The police quickly arrived. Josh's headless body was found. I told them everything about Mr. X, the rose, the video. It all sounded insane. The hotel handed over the surveillance footage. It only showed me entering and leaving the elevator and going into the bathroom. No one wearing a mask appeared near me. The security cameras in the casino also couldn't identify the person who left the flower. I started to doubt my own mind. 3 weeks after New Year's Eve, I was still living in fear. I didn't dare turn on the TV. I also didn't dare look in the mirror for more than a few seconds. Every time my eyes met my reflection, I remembered the mirror in the bathroom that day and Josh's face skin. One afternoon, I received a call from the detective in charge of the case. His voice sounded somewhat urgent. He informed me that Mr. X had been arrested. His name was Elias Mercer, 38 years old. He was a hacker, a stalker who had infiltrated the hotel system to monitor and manipulate me. He was also the drunk customer who had harassed me at the casino. Elias Mercer rented a standard room at the Belladonna Hotel, like any normal guest. But in reality, inside, he turned it into a control center with sophisticated equipment, allowing him to infiltrate the hotel's internal network system. It was through this equipment that Elias broadcast the chilling video on the TV in my bathroom on New Year's Eve. The police tracked him down through the unauthorized intrusion signal used to control the internal broadcasting system. When arrested, he was trying to delete data and restore the system to its original state to cover his tracks. On his personal devices, the police found dozens of videos secretly filming me at the casino, along with documents related to Josh and Abby. And he was the drunk customer who had harassed me right at the casino on New Year's Eve. I just wanted a beautiful girlfriend like you, but you chose that bartender. You have to pay the price. Just that one sentence. It summed up everything. The obsession, the insult he felt when I rejected him, even though I didn't remember his face, and how he decided to ruin me by taking the person I liked. Elias Mercer was sentenced to life imprisonment. I lost everything. I avoid enclosed spaces with TVs. I don't get into elevators alone. Elias is serving a life sentence, and the obsession he left in me is also a sentence. I am serving it every day, living in a world where I learned a terrifying lesson. Polite rejections, or the innocence of accepting a flower, can trigger a stalker's potential violence.
I'm Lauren. Decided to be a single mom to raise my son, Baron. This horrific thing happened to my mom and my son 3 years ago, back when Baron was 6. It was early December and Christmas. The biggest holiday of the year was coming up. The streets were lit up with sparkling lights all over the fake Christmas trees along the sidewalks, making it feel all cozy, even in the cold. The busy tunes from the cafes and shops mixed with all the laughter from the shoppers. I took Baron out to grab some stuff and soak up the vibe. Inside the store, there were huge pine trees covered in lights and booths full of colorful gifts, making it feel like you were in some kind of holiday wonderland. My son and I headed out once the cart was full, and he was super hyped about the stuff we just got. At the entrance, we saw a Santa Claus guy, waving and looking all chill and friendly. Baron ran over all excited. Santa's gotta be every kid's favorite when Christmas rolls around. The kid gave Santa a friendly hello and grabbed his hand. I was pretty sure this was just a store employee. They really know how to grab people's attention and make them happy. I pushed the cart forward, gave a little smile and nod like I was saying hi. Santa smiled and asked Baron what he wanted for Christmas. An RC jet. I love it. It's so cool. Baron was totally pumped. I laughed a little, since that was actually the gift I was going to get him. You'll totally get the gift you want, for you're a good kid, right? Santa's compliments, along with a little reminder, made Baron nod. The way the guy acting like Santa talked was hilarious. He also asked how things were going for me as a single mom. At first, I was touched by the sympathy, but then it was clear I hadn't told him anything about myself, but he knew all about it. I smiled kinda shy and gave him a suspicious look. Hey, you ever heard that song about Santa kissing the mom on Christmas Eve, kid? He asked Baron, but his eyes, smile, and the whole vibe of the question were aimed at me. Before Baron could even react, and I was totally surprised, that Santa came up and kissed my hand all close-like. He didn't stop there, though. He tried to get even closer. I quickly stepped back and pulled my son away, feeling pretty frustrated. When I got to the parking lot, I looked back at the entrance, and that Santa was gone. Some people have such a weird attitude when it comes to customer service. Or is it just how people see things? I quickly shook off the thoughts about that Santa and started getting dinner ready for us. After dinner, we just kicked back in the living room, watching the Christmas special until it got pretty late. Out of nowhere, someone knocked on the door. I looked over, and then it knocked again. I told my son to stay put and walked over to the door. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anyone to show up at 10 at night. I didn't open the door, just stood a few steps back and asked, "Who's there?" I heard that familiar laugh, like in Christmas movies, and then he said, "It's Santa." Right away, Baron yelled and ran over, but I signaled him to chill and stay put. I asked him what he was doing here so late.
This wasn't even the day for giving gifts to kids. Honestly, I was just trying to keep things cool for Baron, but I was pretty sure there was a scammer behind the door. The guy claiming to be Santa said he found something I dropped at Kroger this morning. So, it was that store employee my mom and I ran into earlier. I asked him what the item was, but he just gave me some vague, smart aleck answer. I don't know, but just open the door and I'll show you. Thanks, but I didn't drop anything, and if I did, I wouldn't need it back. The guy clearly had no clue what I was talking about. He just kept going on about me opening the door and all the knocking. I made it clear again and told him I'd call the police if he stuck around for another 5 minutes. Eventually, he just left. I took Baron to the bedroom, and he wouldn't stop asking about Santa. I had no idea how to explain it to him. He'd totally freak out if I told him Santa wasn't real. The next morning, I called up Kroger's customer service to complain about their employees bugging me. But the info they gave me was wild. They said they don't have any employees dressed up as Santa at the entrance. I froze up, anxiety hitting me all at once. If he wasn't a store employee, then who the heck was he? My mind was all over the place with questions, and I couldn't focus the rest of the morning. I called the police right away and told them everything I could remember. They said they'd look into it and boost patrols around the area to keep things safe. I couldn't sleep that night. Every little sound freaked me out. I kept checking my windows and doors, feeling like something was watching me. A week later, the police called and said they caught some sketchy guy. He'd been reported for the same kind of harassment before, and turns out he had a record for burglary and trespassing too. After being grilled, he finally admitted to it. I was glad to hear he got arrested, but those cold eyes stuck with me for a long time. Baron was way too young to get what happened, but I figured I should teach him to be careful around strangers, even if they seemed friendly. That Christmas, we still put up the tree, swapped gifts, and made great memories with our son and family. But deep down, I kept reminding myself to stay on guard. The world's got its fair share of Christmas magic, but also some unexpected dangers. I am Jason, 25 years old. Last summer, I had a terrifying experience, and I will never return to that remote countryside again. Diego, my best friend, begged me to take care of his dog Odin at his countryside house for a few days. At first, I intended to refuse. The house was isolated, surrounded by dense trees, and the air was always chilly, especially frightening at night. But Diego kept insisting, saying there was no one else to ask, and in the end, I agreed. The first day passed fairly peacefully. Odin is a large but gentle and loyal shepherd dog. We played in the yard, where the afternoon sunlight filtered through the tree leaves. The atmosphere was peaceful, with only the sound of the wind blowing and the distant chirping of birds echoing. The scenery was beautiful, but I couldn't deny that it gave off a strange sense of isolation. By evening, I took Odin for a walk around the house, fed him, and made sure everything was fine. Diego's house was beautifully designed and well-equipped, but when the sun set, darkness covered everything, transforming the place into a completely different scene. I shut all the doors tightly and turned on the lights everywhere to feel less scared. When the clock showed nearly 8 o'clock, my stomach began to growl. I ordered food from the nearest restaurant, which was over 30 minutes away by car. The wait seemed endless. The sound of the delivery motorcycle echoed from afar, and I quickly went to the door to receive the order. But just at that moment, Odin began to growl. At first, I thought it was just reacting to the stranger, but then it became unusually agitated. Odin barked loudly, the bark echoing through the silent night, then suddenly charged straight out the door. I panicked, quickly locked the door, grabbed the flashlight, and ran after Odin. Its bark echoed somewhere in the darkness, leading me away from the house without me even realizing. I walked through the narrow paths, where dry branches cracked underfoot. The surroundings were only lit by the faint light of the flashlight, and the dense darkness seemed to want to swallow everything. The wind whistled through the trees, carrying a strange, musty smell. A chill ran down my spine, making me shiver. Odin's bark sounded again, but this time it seemed farther away, as if carried off by the wind. I shouted its name, but all that answered was the echo. My heart began to race, and anxiety grew with each passing minute as I realized I was lost. I continued to follow the sound, but everything around me seemed to be playing hide and seek with me. The sound of a broken branch cracked behind me, but when I turned around there was nothing but darkness and rustling leaves. I tried to stay calm, telling myself that it was just my imagination, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing moment. Every step felt as if an invisible gaze was watching me, making me afraid to stop. Then I saw it. A tall, dark figure, standing motionless among the tree trunks. The figure must have been about 7 feet tall, its body thin and rigid. The flashlight beam revealed a faded baseball cap worn on its head. I stood frozen, my throat dry, and my legs felt like they were nailed to the ground. It took me a few seconds to realize that it was just a mannequin. It was made of straw, covered in old, tattered clothes. But why would there be a mannequin placed in the middle of the forest? Who made it? And for what purpose? Feeling extremely uneasy, I decided to return to the old path, even though I wasn't sure I was going in the right direction. My mind was spinning with chaotic thoughts, and my legs felt tired with every step. When I finally escaped the forest, Diego's house appeared dimly in the flickering light. I almost collapsed when I entered the house. The clock was now almost 2 a.m. Odin has not returned yet. I sat down on the chair, holding a glass of water with shaking hands, trying to calm myself down. But the feeling of anxiety and guilt still weighs heavily in my heart. I blame myself for letting Odin get away. That whole night, I couldn't sleep, just waiting in vain. The next morning, I continued to search everywhere for Odin, but there wasn't any trace. When Diego returned, I had to confess that Odin was missing. His eyes were full of anger, but underneath it was sadness that couldn't be hidden. Odin is not just an ordinary dog, but also a close friend for 10 years, a gift from Diego's late father. I don't know what happened to Odin in the forest that night. The feeling of guilt still haunts me, and the image of a tall black shadow in the forest always appears in my dreams. I just hope that Odin has found a safe place, but I still fear that he has been caught up in something more terrible, and I will never forget that terrible night. My name is Emily Carter, 21 years old, currently majoring in psychology at New York University. To cover my tuition and living expenses, I work part-time at a McDonald's in downtown Manhattan. My shifts usually last until the early morning, and I always have to walk a long way back to my small apartment in the Lower East Side. That night, everything seemed as usual, just like any other day, until I experienced one of the most terrifying encounters of my life. The clock on my wrist read 3:15 a.m. when I left the store. The streets were deserted, with only the yellow glow of the streetlights and the sound of wind blowing through the dark alleys. The fatigue from the long shift made me want to get home as quickly as possible. I put on my headphones, letting a soft jazz tune fill the silence. As I walked, I suddenly felt the sensation of being watched. A man stood at the corner ahead, under the dim streetlight. He was tall and thin, wearing a gray hoodie and faded jeans. His messy hair and deep-set eyes made me uncomfortable. He took a small step forward, his gaze fixing on my face. I tried to walk faster, but he approached me, his lips curling into an unsettling smile. He complimented me on being beautiful, his voice deep and soft, but it made me shiver. It was clear he was trying to seem friendly, but his eyes pierced through me. I made up a name, just wanting to end the conversation as quickly as possible. But then, he moved closer, reaching out to touch my shoulder. I stepped back, a chill running down my spine. "Sorry, I have to go," I said quickly, hoping he would take the hint. But no, he kept following me. His footsteps were heavy behind me, each step matching the frantic beat of my heart. He offered to walk me home, but I immediately declined, feeling that something was terribly wrong. My refusal seemed to have no effect. I tried to stay calm, trying not to show my fear, but with every passing second, his presence felt more threatening. I glanced around, hoping to see someone or a car, but the street remained eerily quiet. I felt trapped between the darkness and this unwanted man's presence. As I neared my apartment building, I thought I was finally going to escape, but a horrifying thought crossed my mind. He could follow me inside. My building had no security, and the front door was often only locked temporarily. If he followed me in, there would be nothing stopping him from finding where I lived. He began pleading, his voice growing more desperate. I shook my head, standing in front of the door, trying to stay calm, but I was drenched in sweat. I knew if I didn't act quickly, I might be in real danger. Just then, the building door suddenly opened from the inside. A neighbor, Mr. Johnson, had just returned from his night shift. Seizing the opportunity, I quickly slipped inside while he kept the door open. The man outside tried to follow, but I managed to slam the door shut just in time. The window glass separated me from his angry stare. I ran up to my apartment, my feet barely touching the ground. When the door finally locked behind me, I collapsed on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the fear overtaking me. The light from the small room was not enough to chase away the darkness in my mind. The next morning, I started the day with a heavy heart. When I opened the door to my apartment, a stack of photos fell to the floor, startling me. I picked them up and was horrified to find a photo from a year ago, when I had just started working at McDonald's, with my hair dyed bright blue. The photos were taken from very close distances. A message was sent to my phone, making my body tremble as I read it. "I've always been watching you, Emily. Every night I've been standing across the street, watching you from the window of the apartment across from yours, from the moment you start your shift until you come back. You never noticed me, but I've always been there." My throat tightened, and I couldn't breathe. The feeling of fear and helplessness overwhelmed me as I realized the man had been watching me for a long time, from a very close distance. After that terrifying night, I moved to a new apartment and changed my part-time job. I decided to change my routine, saving money to take a taxi after every shift, no matter what other expenses I had to cut. Still, the figure of that man haunted me in my dreams. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if Mr. Johnson hadn't happened to show up. The thought sends a chill down my spine. New York, the city that never sleeps, sometimes brings nights as haunting as this. I have never forgotten that night. The night I first truly felt fear. I was only 16 years old at the time, living with my parents in an old house a few miles outside of town. The house had an old-fashioned design with a sloping roof and stained glass windows. The wind would whistle through the cracks in the windows, bringing with it the smell of damp earth, making the place both cozy and eerie in its own way. We didn't own the house, but rented it through a middle-aged man, Mr. Dwight. Both my parents worked the night shift at the town hospital, my dad in the emergency room, and my mom as a nurse. They would leave the house late in the afternoon and not return until the next morning. So, I was used to being home alone, even though it could be a bit chilly and sometimes downright scary. That night, the sky outside was pitch black. I sat in the living room, the dim light from the lamp casting a soft yellow glow on the cracked walls. I was curled up on the couch, reading an old book, when I heard a noise. It sounded like someone walking on the gravel outside. At first, I thought it was the neighbors' pets. They often ran into my yard like that. But then I heard another sound, It was a light tap on the window. I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Through the dim light, I saw a shadow outside. His eyes sent a chill down my spine, slowly, as if peering right through the glass, looking straight into my mind. He pressed his hand against the window, as if trying to get a better look inside. I froze, not daring to move. After a moment, he started walking around the house, trying all the doors. The back door creaked as he grabbed the handle, then the side door, then the front door. Each movement was smooth and deliberate, as if he knew the house layout very well.
I know you're in there. Don't hide. I have a special gift for you.
He said in a flat, drawn-out voice. I snapped out of my fear-induced stupor and ran to lock all the doors, securing each lock as quickly as I could. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the key, trying to twist it fast before the man got any closer. I looked up and saw that he had returned to the living room window. His eyes were fixed on me through the glass, peered on his face under the dim light. I tried to stay calm and reached for the phone on the table. I texted my dad. Dad, there's a strange man. He's walking around the house. Please come home. I didn't call because I was afraid he might hear the ringtone or my voice. The house was so quiet that even the smallest sound could echo. When I sent the text, I heard the window shaking. He was trying to open it. I crawled off the couch, doing my best not to make any noise. I hid in the dark corner between the couch and the bookshelf, listening to my own breath. The wind outside still howled, but his footsteps and the sound of the door handles rattling as he tried to open them made my heart race. He was muttering something, but I couldn't make out the words. Time seemed to stretch on, as if every second lasted an eternity. Then suddenly, everything went silent. No more footsteps, no more tapping. I didn't dare leave my hiding spot. A little while later, I heard the sound of my dad's car pulling into the driveway. I ran outside, tears streaming down my face, and threw myself into my dad's arms. My dad looked around and saw a small brown box right in front of the front door. On top of it was a piece of paper with messy handwriting, a gift for my little girl. Inside the box was an old, worn doll with wide, unblinking eyes. My dad scanned the area, then noticed a pale pink envelope right by the door. My name was written on it in capital letters, along with a small heart symbol next to it. Inside the envelope were photos of me, watering plants in the garden, laughing while playing with the dogs, and even one of me sleeping in my own room. I felt my blood run cold when I saw the scribbled note on a small piece of paper. You look so beautiful when you're alone. The police arrived shortly after and began searching the house inside and out. The next morning, they discovered fingerprints on the living room window where the man had tried to open it. Additionally, security footage from a nearby house showed him lurking around the area that night. When the police investigated further, they found a hidden door in the basement, a door that my family had never known about. The door led to a secret room filled with strange objects, old film reels, antique cameras, and numerous photographs of women, including me. The police confirmed that part of the house's structure had been altered before it was rented out, serving a sick purpose. Mr. Dwight, the landlord, was immediately arrested. He quickly confessed to his crimes, but did so with a disturbing sense of pleasure. He also admitted that he hadn't just done this to my family. The house was his great design, a place where he had lured many victims before. Some girls had luckily escaped, but not all of them. That secret room was now part of the investigation into missing persons cases in the area, so it turned out that his friendly and eager demeanor, promoting the house as a safe, peaceful place for families, was all an act. He had even agreed to lower the rent, claiming it was to keep the house occupied and prevent damage. But all of those actions were not out of kindness. They were because he wanted easy access to my family, especially me. My family immediately packed up and moved to a place closer to town, with friendly neighbors and modern security systems. We sold most of our old belongings because we didn't want to take anything that had once belonged to that house. But even though we had moved, the haunting never left me. Sometimes, I dream of Mr. Dwight's eyes watching me from the basement window, staring at me unblinking. I always feel like someone is watching me, even when I know I'm in a much safer place. My name is Lily, and the story I'm about to tell took place when I was 10 years old. My family moved to a remote countryside area in Montana when my father got a new job. Our house was quite small, made of wood, nestled between rolling hills and endless stretches of pine forests. The landscape here was very peaceful, to the point where sometimes I felt completely isolated from the world. My father was a carpenter. He often spent hours in his workshop, making tables and chairs that he was very proud of. My mother stayed at home as a housewife and took care of the family. There weren't many neighbors around our home and no one my age, so I spent most of my time either playing alone in the backyard or reading books in my room. I loved the sense of freedom here, but at times, the solitude made me feel uneasy. About half a mile from our house stood the old house of Mr. Howard, with peeling paint and a sagging porch. He was elderly and lived alone. People around here said he used to be a soldier, but ever since returning from the war, he lived in isolation, rarely interacting with anyone. Mr. Howard would often stand by the gate, staring at me when I came home from school, his deep-set eyes sending shivers down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was just his odd habit. Everyone in the village avoided him, and I wasn't an exception. One afternoon, as I was walking home from school, I had the feeling that someone was watching me from afar. I slowly turned around to check and was startled to see Mr. Howard standing on his porch, staring intently at me. I greeted him, keeping the proper respect for an elder, then walked away faster. When I looked back, thinking I'd gone far enough, I was shocked to see Mr. Howard still standing there, eyes never leaving me. A faint smile on his face made me want to run, but also made me curious. That evening, it was quite late, and I didn't want to sleep because I was engrossed in a new toy my father had given me that afternoon. Suddenly, I noticed the flashlight light flashing through my bedroom window. At first, I thought it was just a car's headlights or someone's flashlight, but my room was on the second floor, and the light always came from a specific spot outside the pine forest, repeating several times. I covered myself with the blanket, tightly closed my eyes, and hummed a familiar tune I often sang whenever I felt anxious, then eventually fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I didn't tell my parents, maybe because I was used to dealing with things on my own after being alone for so long. One late afternoon, while playing in the backyard, I happened to see Mr. Howard standing near the forest behind our house, holding something shiny in the sunlight. He kept waving the object in his hand, muttering angry curses and scolding. I stared for a few seconds, then suddenly realized that it was a blade, the sunlight reflecting sharply on its metal surface. A sudden chill ran through me. I quickly ran into the house and locked the door. My heart pounded in my chest, but curiosity still lingered, so I peeked through the window to see if Mr. Howard had left. My mother noticed my strange behavior and asked if something had happened. I was about to tell her, but then I shook my head and smiled weakly. I was afraid she wouldn't believe me and would think I was imagining things. That evening, the light didn't just flash through the window, but lingered longer. I quickly pulled the blanket over my body, trying to control my breathing. My heart raced, and I couldn't bring myself to stand up and look. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I was about to call my parents when the light suddenly went out, and everything returned to the eerie silence. It took me a long time to fall asleep, my eyes heavy. The next morning, my father discovered strange footprints near the window while cleaning the backyard. The footprints were large, with mud clearly left from the forest. My mother mentioned that she had also heard footsteps the previous night. Immediately, I told my parents about the 2 times the light had flashed into my room through the window. I burst into tears, my 10-year-old strength having reached its limit. From that day on, I could feel the tension quietly spreading throughout the family, like a small flame smoldering. That night it rained heavily, and the wind howled through the cracks in the doors, with tree branches scraping against the window like eerie whispers. I tried to focus on my book to forget everything, but then a soft knock came from the window. I froze for a few seconds, then trembling, I went over and drew back the curtains, only to be stunned. Mr. Howard was standing on a ladder, his face so close that I could see every wrinkle. He knocked again, and with his other hand, pointed to the door. His lips moved as though he wanted to say something, but I couldn't hear anything. I screamed and ran straight to my parents' room, incoherently pointing toward the room, tears streaming down my face. My father grabbed the shotgun and rushed to my room, while my mother called the police. Even though my mother held me tightly, a coldness still enveloped my body. When the police arrived, they didn't find Mr. Howard, but they discovered a ladder and a flashlight left near the window. The footprints led deep into the forest and then disappeared, possibly erased by the heavy rain. The next morning, the police came to Mr. Howard's house. The front door was unlocked and the inside was messy, filled with old items. On the old sofa, Mr. Howard's body was found, still drenched from the rain. His face was covered by his disheveled hair, and his eyes were still wide open, staring at something tightly clutched in his hand. It was a photo of a little girl who looked very much like me, standing in the middle of a field of flowers, her eyes shining with happiness. The police continued their investigation and discovered that the girl in the photo was Mr. Howard's daughter. She had passed away many years ago in an accident on a stormy night when he was still serving in the military. Mr. Howard couldn't overcome the shock of losing his daughter. Perhaps when he saw me, he mistook me for his daughter. His many stares were actually him keeping watch, and the flashlight shining through the window was his way of trying to protect his little girl from some danger. In his journal, the police found a scrawled note: "Be careful, don't let them take you." One evening, I ran into the backyard to retrieve a toy I had dropped. Suddenly, from the direction of the forest, I saw the faint light of a flashlight flash and then disappear quickly. My heart pounded in my chest, and I stood frozen, unable to take my eyes off the spot. A chilling, indescribable feeling of unease engulfed me. Since then, the flashlight beam has always been a haunting presence for me. Every time I see a flicker of light in the dark, I remember that moment, and the fear rushes back. Now, as an adult, I look back at everything and wonder, could the flashlight that shone into my